All right, I'm going to share my screen. Awesome. Um, Mary, you can hear me okay? Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. Um, this is a Michigan Wetlands Association MWA members only webinar. Uh, the Michigan Wetlands Association is dedicated to the protection and restoration of wetlands and associated ecosystems through science-based programs, education, and stewardship. We are a nonprofit organization, and thanks everybody for joining. My name is Jason DeMoss, and I'll be the host for today's webinar. So again, thanks everybody for being a member. Your membership helps support our mission and daily operating costs, and it gives everybody discounts on trainings, and it allows you to access these members-only webinars, and it gets you access to our conferences and other social events. Speaking of conferences, the 2026 conference registration is live. It'll be from October 6th to the 8th at the H Hotel in Midland. And all the details can be seen on screen here, and you can find the details on the MWA website. So all the available trainings for this year are posted at mywetlands.org/training. And thanks everybody for joining all the trainings. Most of them are pretty full, but we still have space in the freshwater mussel ID class, the herpetofauna class, and the bankful ID class. So if you'd like to join those classes, please go to the website listed above. And the rare wetland workshops will be announced shortly for 2026. And the upcoming webinars, Saving Rare Wetland Butterflies at John Ball Zoo will be scheduled, I believe, for May 4th. And you should see an email for that coming out shortly. And if you're interested in presenting for an MWA webinar, or if you have any topic suggestions, you can contact Nicole at nstewart@nicewanderenvironmental.com. So for today's webinar, of course, it is through Zoom, which you all have joined. All of the attendees are anonymous and muted, and the webinar is currently being recorded. You should see a Q&A function to submit all of your questions, and questions will be addressed following Mary's presentation. So today's webinar is the Partnership for Voluntary Wetland Restoration, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services Partners for Fish and Wildlife Program. Our guest is Meredith Holm. She is a wildlife biologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And I am going to hand the screen off to Mary, and I'll let her introduce herself.
All right, thank you very much. Just one second. Okay, can you see that?
No.
No.
There's.
Okay. Let's see. Worked a second ago, so let me try this again. Oh, I know why. I had to hit share. All right, hold on. Should come up now.
Perfect.
All right.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for having me. Yep, I work for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Partners for Fish and Wildlife Program. I have worked for the Partners Program for about 16 years, and for the Fish and Wildlife Service, before that, I worked for the BLM and the Park Service for about 20 years total. So really happy to be here and talk about our program. I always start out with the mission of the Fish and Wildlife Service, which is working with others to conserve, protect, and enhance fish, wildlife, plants, and their habitats for the continuing benefit of the American people. So everything we do is for wildlife, but also for people. And since 1987, that's when the Partners Program, I will call it the Partners Program because it's kind of long to say the whole thing, but the Partners Program was established in 1987, the Midwest program, and since then we have restored over 700,000 acres of wetland and upland habitat, and almost 3,000 miles of stream habitat just in the Midwest. Okay, the purpose of the Partners Program, it's a voluntary program to provide financial and technical assistance to private landowners who wish to protect and restore wetlands, uplands, and riparian and in-stream habitats. And we do this for our federal trust resources, which are migratory birds, interjurisdictional fish, and threatened and endangered species. That's a copper-belly water snake on this slide there. But also for other species. We call them bonus resources. So game species, pollinators. Our program has grown a lot since 1987. We were really focused originally on waterfowl conservation. And then it kind of grew to include migratory birds with grassland restoration, threatened and endangered species, and probably just within the last 10 years or so, there's been more of a focus on pollinators as well, who also need wetlands. Why the Partners Program? Why protect and restore wetlands on private land? Well, 79% of Michigan is in private ownership. So if we're going to conserve and protect habitat for fish and wildlife, we need to work on private lands and provide assistance to private landowners that are interested in working with us. Some basics about the Partners Program. It's habitat focused, so doing on-the-ground work, implementing on-the-ground change, whether that's wetlands, grasslands, or other habitat. It's completely voluntary, so we don't go out usually looking for folks to join our program or knocking on doors. It's a lot of word of mouth and neighbors telling neighbors and giving presentations like this. People come to us, call, and are interested in working with us on our program. So it's on private property, and that includes anything besides state and federal lands. So it can be township, county, local government, nonprofit, and individual landowners. It's stewardship driven, so we really want the landowners, to take ownership of these projects, to care about the land, because they're going to sign a 10-year landowner agreement that's saying they're going to keep this habitat on their land for at least a minimum of that amount of time. We provide technical and financial assistance every step of the way. So from meeting with the landowner to designing the project, to implementing the project, getting the project done, working with local contractors, to project completion and monitoring, and being there throughout that 10-year agreement period for technical assistance after the project is completed. And just to reiterate that it's wildlife first, our federal trust resources are really what's driving this. So in Michigan, these are focus areas that were developed in our last regional strategic plan in 2022. We are redoing our strategic plan this year. It goes through 26, and so in 27, we'll have a new regional strategic plan for the Partners Program in the Midwest. And at a state level for Michigan, we are looking at our focus areas and seeing if we need to make changes to those. These were developed by looking at a lot of different things, looking at where we had partnerships. We work with a lot of partners to get this work done, what initiatives and plans are out there and where their focus areas were, what resources we have and opportunities for restoration, as well as looking at where some at-risk species or listed species were, priority species. A lot of different information went into developing these focus areas. But you'll notice there's a big gap in our state. Whole peninsula is left out. So that is something that we've been trying to build capacity and look at the UP and how we can work more in the UP. So that hopefully is coming soon. We're having some conversations with partners on increasing capacity up there. So fingers crossed that soon we'll have a better map. Some of the habitat types that the Partners program works on wetlands, streams, young forest, grasslands. I would say wetlands and grasslands are really the bread and butter of our program. Those are the majority of projects, but we do stream work mostly. A lot of that happens in the northern lower peninsula, cold water streams, but we are doing more in the southern lower peninsula as well. And then young forest, that has kind of picked up, and we're doing a little more work in that arena as well. So this won't be news to any of you, but why restore wetlands? 4.2 million acres have been destroyed in the last 200 years. And in Michigan, it's been really heavy in the coastal areas in the southern counties. You can see from the map over there, Saginaw Bay and the Thumb, and around the eastern side. Have lost 75 to 90% of their wetlands. This due to conversion to agriculture and development. And no matter how many we restore, there's always more to restore. Our program is primarily doing this for wildlife habitat, so for breeding, nesting, foraging, but wetlands provide a lot of other benefits to people besides wildlife habitat, flood control and storage, improving and protecting water quality, filtering, acting as nature's kidneys, and as well as recreation. A lot of money goes into recreation involving wetlands in the state. And then just aesthetics, like a lot of our wildfire production areas or parks that have wetlands, people love to visit just for the beauty and the wildlife watching that is there. They also provide educational opportunities. We've done some wetland projects on school properties and parks and with cities that provide opportunity for education about why they're important to restore, as well as partnership building, working with our partners, whether those are nonprofits or cities, townships, to build those partnerships and to help with all of these things. So for the Partners Program, our wetland project goals focus on restoring hydrology. So looking at something that has been degraded, altered by man, ditches, things that have been drained. So restoring that hydrology is number one. And then a lot of our wetland projects have invasive species. We don't do a lot of invasive species projects on their own, but if it is included in a wetland restoration project, then we're gonna, treat those invasive species either by raising the water level or by other means, herbicide, things like that. So typical wetland projects in the Partners Program can range in size. They can be less than an acre. Actually, it says an acre, but they can be pretty small to up to, we did a 90-acre one a few years ago. So they really range in size. And we're looking at something that has been drained or partially drained, and it has hydric soil. So we're not going to put a wetland where there shouldn't be a wetland. We really want to make sure this is, doing a restoration. We're looking at basins or low-lying areas, depressions. We want these to be high-quality habitat once the restoration is done. We also have to look at cost effectiveness. We don't have a huge budget, so working with partners really helps this. We get grants and work with a lot of partners to make our dollars go further. And we work with local contractors, and sometimes we are able to do some of the work ourselves through our program. We can't have any adverse effects off the property of the landowner we're working on, so we can't flood other properties unless we have a flood easement with that neighbor. That's really important. So we have to make sure when we're designing these or looking at these that we're not affecting anyone's property but the landowner we're working with. And we don't dig ponds. We get a lot of calls for ponds, for fish ponds. That's not, it's not the goal of our program. So, and we don't do anything in undisturbed natural wetlands as well. Some typical projects include tile breaks. If there's drain tile, going in, finding that tile, breaking it. If there's a drainage ditch that we can plug to back water up. If there's a low area, putting in a low level berm, controlling invasive species, like I mentioned earlier. And then kind of new, maybe just new in terminology, microtopography. So making sure that the wetland has a diversity of depths and contours and vegetation. This is another example of just some of the projects that we've worked on in the past. Ditch plugs, low-level berms up on the top right, push outs, which would be excavation. Sometimes there's areas that sediment has built up. So in order to really restore that wetland, we might have to move some of the soil and do a shallow water or shallow excavation. And then tile break and or removal. Just another example of a before project, before a ditch plug was put in, and then after below. So, and reinforcing that with rock so it doesn't wash out and water can still spill over the top. And here's an example of a shallow excavation. We've done quite a few, I would say, kind of more shorebird habitat projects on the west side of the state that are pretty shallow, and or the landowner might have a way to control the water level with a water control structure to lower and raise that water level at different times of the year, whether that be for management of invasive species or management for waterfowl and other birds. Here's just some pictures of some tile breaks. We find tile of all sorts, old clay tile. I think we've even found old fabric tile, plastic tile. And then you can see a before shot up on the top. And then this is just a tile break, and that's after what it looks like. I mentioned water control structures. We don't always put these in. It's really dependent on the goals of the project and the landowner. If the landowner is going to use this to, like I said, manage the wetland, whether that be vegetation or at different times of the year, for different types of birds or wildlife, we can put them in. They're expensive, and they can cause a problem if they're not well maintained. So it's not something that happens on every wetland, but we have put them in where warranted and where we know they're going to be managed and maintained. So I mentioned not digging ponds. A lot of our wetlands are, just deep enough for a duck to put their head down. We really want a variety of depths, so there might be some areas that are deeper than others, but not all. We don't want just a pond with all open water, so a variety of depth. You can see, for example, in the picture on the top right, where that trash rack is actually where water is going to come up to. This was a wetland that was just completed, so it hasn't filled yet. So it will have a variety of depths of water and vegetation. Some of my favorite wetlands are the forested wetlands. We do a lot of these for copperbelly water snake down in Hillsdale County, but other wildlife use it too, wood ducks, green herons, some of really interesting projects that have resulted in some pretty cool wetlands. And we can't talk about wetlands without talking about invasive species. So as I mentioned previously, we don't just do projects that are treating invasives, but if we're doing a project where we're restoring a wetland or an upland and there's invasives, that would be part of the project to treat those invasive species. So here are some of the ones that we find most regularly when we're doing our restoration projects. And we have a variety of methods that we would treat those and work with the landowner or contractors to treat those, whether that's herbicide or putting more water on, or getting beetles for purple loosestrife. Lots of ways to incorporate that into the project. We do some restorations on wetland fens. We've done a lot for Mitchell Sater butterfly and treating cattails and woody plants in the fence to open up. So that's just a before and after photo of what that can look like, where maybe we're not even doing anything to the water level, but just treating the vegetation. And I think it's important there when the biologists are going out and meeting with the landowner to see if we can think about the sources of why this is happening as well, for continued management and looking at neighboring properties, like if there's a farm field where a lot of fertilizer is running off and maybe increasing growth of plant matter, things like that. And everyone hopefully knows what this plant is. So Phragmites, we have a lot of it in Michigan. A few years ago, we had a biologist who spent a lot of time and money treating frag in the coastal areas, Saginaw Bay, spraying with helicopters. We're now treating a lot of this in conjunction with projects in the Metro Detroit area, but there are SISMAs too, thank goodness, that work on a lot of frag projects. So it's something that we incorporate into projects, but we don't have the budget to go out, unfortunately, and just treat frag on its own. And I know we were talking about wetlands, but I had to put in a few things about grasslands because our program does restore grasslands, and I wanted to just share a little bit about what we're doing in the upland sphere, and then we can talk a little bit about more of the specifics of the partners program. So grassland loss, we've lost 99%. There are small remnants that remain, some savanna. A lot of it has been lost to land conversion or has been overtaken because of fire suppression. So when we work with landowners on grassland projects, similar to wetland projects, we work with the landowner, put together a project design. We talk about site preparation, whether it's a fallow field or it's just a natural area that has grown up in invasives or woody plants, or it's an ag field. We talk about site prep, we talk about seeding, we put together a plan. Once that is put in place, we can either seed ourselves or we can work with contractors to seed and do site prep. We talk about follow-up practices for establishing the prairie, mowing, things like that. And again, there's a 10-year agreement, and we're there for that whole period. Grasslands take a lot longer than a wetland project to see what you want to see. It takes a lot of time. Everyone probably knows the sleep, creep, leap. So we're there for that long-term management and site visits throughout the project, just like we are for wetlands. And we know a ton of stuff uses wetlands, but also I just put this in for our things that use our prairies. And especially we've been focused a lot lately on urban areas, and the different wildlife that can use them is just amazing. And a lot of times when we do a wetland project, there's an upland portion adjacent to the wetland that we can plant as well. And as I mentioned, we've done a lot of urban projects in the city, focused mainly on pollinator habitat. So bird and pollinator habitat, and it's really taken off and it's just been exciting. So I want to share some of those photos with you. We haven't done a lot of wetland in the urban areas, but we are looking at, I think it's an 80-acre, used to be a golf course, and there's wetland potential there. So that will be an exciting project to work on. And just some photos from those projects that just really range in diversity of plants and the project types and where they're at and size, anything from like 1/10 of an acre to, I think now we've done over 50 acres in the city with like 200 more planned in the next couple of years. And getting all of our projects, we like to, whether it's a wetland or a grassland or stream or a forest project, get partners involved. So a lot of that happens with nonprofit partners we're working with, but it could be a school. We really like to get people out there, get their hands dirty, helping work on these projects together. And I'll just go through these pretty quick because this is like grassland stuff, but site prep is pretty important. Well, the most important step when doing grassland restoration. So removing any invasives, non-natives, getting that seed to soil contact. And so some of these projects can take a couple years before we even get seed in the ground. So landowners have to be a little patient with these, a lot more than they would with a wetland. Usually when we're doing a wetland project, once we've surveyed and got permits, we can get a contractor out there that same year. So these take a little bit more patience. And then we're there to help with seeding, establishment, and monitoring, just like we would be for a wetland project, helping either do the work ourselves or work with a local contractor, and then coming back and seeing what results we got and if we need to make any changes, if we need to alter our management, anything like that. So for all of these projects, the landowner's role, if a landowner comes to us and wants to do a project, we go out and we meet with them. And their role would be to sign a 10-year agreement. That's a Partners for Fish and Wildlife Program landowner agreement saying that they're going to keep the habitat for a minimum of 10 years. We can do them for longer, but most have been around 10 or 15 years. There's no other restrictions on the property at all. You know, we want you to use it. We want you to put paths in, you know, we just want it to stay habitat. And if it doesn't, there is a clause in there that each party has to give 30 days notice to get out of it. And you would end up having to pay back the cost that the Fish and Wildlife Service put into the project. And that would be like prorated for the amount of time your project has been in the program. So if we put in $1,000 and you were in for 5 out of the 10 years, you would pay back 500. We don't have many people getting out of the program, which is a good thing. And most people keep their project or their habitat much longer than our agreements are. It is a cost share program. We look for leveraged funds, and that's not necessarily all from the landowner. It can be from partners. We get money through the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, through NACA, through Ducks Unlimited, National Wild Turkey Federation, lots of different partners, even the state DNR. So that is all to help fund these projects. But if a landowner can put in some of their time, which we consider in-kind services, that is always valuable. If they're going to do some seeding of a berm for a wetland once it's done or anything in preparation, we count that time or invasive species treatment. We count that as cost share in the agreement. Landowners usually pay for permit fees if we need to get a permit for the wetland through Eagle. That's a pretty low cost. And then landowners are responsible for maintaining the wetland or grassland, whatever habitat we put in. It's their job to make sure, especially on wetlands, that, you know, no trees are growing on your berm, you keep it mowed. You make sure if there's a water control structure, it's clear, no spillways get blocked, things like that. And the local coordinator's role, that's the biologist who is working with the landowner to come out and meet with you, to look at the property, to find out what your goals are. Why do you want this habitat? What are you looking for out of this habitat? Then that biologist will work with you to evaluate the site, to put together a design. So for site evaluation, we're looking at what was this historically? What is the soil? You know, what's going on here on this site that will help us put a better plan together to restore the wetland or grassland. Compliance, I mentioned Eagle. We work with them through the Voluntary Wetland Restoration Program to get permits for wetlands when they're needed. So we do all of that on behalf of the landowner. The landowner just pays that permit fee. And then we work with the contractor, or some of our biologists are trained and have equipment or rent equipment to do the work themselves. So if they're doing it themselves, they're out there doing it, or we hope hire contractors who have experience in these projects to do it. And the biologist is overseeing the project, working with them, making sure they're doing things that are part of the design, making sure that everything is working, making sure if something comes up that we didn't expect, that we're there to make sure the project still meets its goals. And then afterwards, coming back out, making sure the project is functioning how it should be, making sure that, things are moving along how everyone wanted them to, and that it's a good project and everything's going good. And then each biologist has their own budget. So when it comes to what projects get done every year, um, that's up to the biologist and how many projects they have and how much funds they have. So this is a map of our current staff in the Partners Program in Michigan. We have 6 biologists and myself as the state coordinator. Heather is up in Alpena, so she covers more of the northern lower and some of when we get calls from the UP. Colleen is a biologist, a partnered biologist, but she is actually a Ducks Unlimited employee implementing our program with funds from the DNR. But she works in that thumb area, in the orange area, Saginaw Bay, and the thumb. And then we have Gib King, who does a lot in that dark green area of the state. And as well as we've lost some people, so now he's stretched pretty thin going down to the southern part of the western part of the state. And Chris Lee kind of shares that area and the eastern southern lower part as well. And then Megan and Mariah are pollinator biologists, and they do a lot of work in Detroit and urban areas, Grand Rapids, doing a lot of pollinator habitat, but are stretching their wings and learning and getting training to do more wetland projects as well. And then the map there of the completed projects, that's from our last strategic plan. I unfortunately don't have the new map, but just to show you in our region where a lot of our projects have been completed. So wrapping up, really we want to make sure that we have a relationship with a landowner where we're going back and checking these projects. I've gone back to projects I restored 16 years ago, and making sure we did a quality project. Did the wildlife respond? Are the landowners satisfied? And usually the answers to those are yes, yes, and yes. And then I wanted to share this photo a landowner sent me, which I thought was great, of him and his grandchildren enjoying the wetland and pulling some purple loosestrife out of the wetland. And I kind of flew through that, so I'm happy to take any questions. Or you can always reach out to me if you're interested in our program. I put my contact information on the slide. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mary. Um, so as you can see on the bottom of your Zoom screen, if you have any questions, you should be able to hit the Q&A button and submit a question. Right now, we do not have any questions. I do see there is one hand raised. Um, so if you're able to submit your question into the Q&A box, because everybody is muted. Um, mm, no questions? No? I'll just give it one more minute. Uh, um, Mary, could you put your oh, here we go. All right. So here's our question. I'm wondering about low-tech process-based restoration, beaver dam analogs and whatnot, and if that's something the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service does or is interested in doing.
That's a great question. I know a lot of our colleagues out west have been using those techniques. I don't think we've gotten into much of it yet in Michigan, but just as a side note, I used to live trap beavers up at Isle Royal, and so I have a soft spot in my heart for them, and I think it'd be really cool if we incorporated some of that work into our restoration. But thank you for asking.
Sweet. Um, that is the only question we've had so far. Um, well, with no other questions, thank you so much. Oh, one more. Do you work with landowners on repair of erosional features in association with some of these projects?
If there's erosion caused by a project that we put in, yes. And it just depends on what the source of the erosion is. If it's stream bank erosion, we would probably send that over to our fisheries staff. But if it's something to do with a wetland, um, and especially with one of our projects, then yes, we do.
We have another question. Do you work with landowners who have conservation easements?
Yes. Yes, we do.
We, thanks everybody for the questions. Um, and if there are no other questions, we just wanted to thank you again for taking the time, Mary, for presenting to us. We've never had a webinar like this before, so we really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks everybody for joining.
Bye.